In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a simple blog using React and Contentful. Before we move any further, let me show you the finished product of what we will be building in this video. As you can see, this is a super simple single page application that is made using React, and it is being populated with the data that is written inside Contentful. In very simple terms, Contentful is a platform that lets you create and update the content of your website or a mobile application or any other platform that displays your content. Contentful saves you the time and hassle to create your own backend, like setting up the servers or creating any kind of a database. It also gives you the powerful APIs that you can use to fetch the content and display it in a front-end application like React. As a first step, let's start by creating an account in Contentful. I already have an account in Contentful, so I will directly log in to Contentful to show you the interface. Once you log into Contentful, the first step you need to do is to create a space. As a free user, you are allowed to have two different free spaces or two different environments. Let's start by creating a free space. So I click on this button and let me name my space. I'll call it my space. And I will create an empty space. So let's click on the button, proceed to confirmation. And then click on confirm and create a space. Once the space is created, we will now click on content model. Here we are going to create a content model for our content. So content model basically defines what kind of content are you going to create in Contentful. So let's click on the button that says add content type. In my example, I'm going to name my content recipes and click on create. Now I have to add some fields for my content. So I will start by adding a text field and I'm going to call it name. This name will represent the name of the recipe that I am going to add. It will be a short text field and I will click on the create button. I will click on add field button again, and this time I am going to choose media, and this time I am going to name it featured image. And I will click on create button again and click on add field again, and this time I am going to call it description, and it will be a long text field. I will click on create button again, and then I am going to save my content type. Now that we have the content model already created and saved, we are now ready to add the content for our web application. So we will start by clicking on the content over here and click on add recipes. So let me start by adding the very first content, which is basically the recipe for an egg croissant. So I am going to enter the title, which is the name of the recipe. I am going to enter the description. You will notice that the description is in the markdown format. Now I will add the featured image by clicking on this link over here. Click on the link and I'm going to name this image that I'm going to upload, which is for egg croissant. I will click on the file selector to upload an image. Click on open. Now this media is already uploaded, so I will publish this media. Go back, and now you see that the very first content is already there. So we have the name for the recipe, we have the featured image, and we have the description, which is the method to prepare the recipe. Once you are satisfied with your content, you can then come and click on this button and click on publish. I will pause the video over here and I will add some more recipes to populate my web application. Now you will notice that I have added a few more recipes. You can see the content section of Contentful where I have some 4 recipes added over here. At this point, I am ready to start working on my React application, where I am going to fetch all this data from Contentful and start displaying in my web application in React. I will start by creating a folder on the desktop, and I am going to call it recipes blog. Make sure the name of the folder is all in lowercase. Now I will open this folder inside my terminal. So I will open the terminal window. I will type cd and I'm going to just drag and drop this folder over here and hit enter. Now I am in this folder, and what I am going to do now is to install create React app inside the folder. To do that, I will type the command npx create React app and put a dot and then hit enter. So what this is going to do is to install the create React app boilerplate setup so I can start using the React application right away. Once the create React app is installed, I am going to open the project inside the Visual Studio Code. And I am also going to start the development server. To start the development server, I am going to use the command npm start. Now let's head over to the Visual Studio Code and do some initial cleanup. So I am going to get rid of some of the files that I don't need for this project. So the only files that I need is going to be app.js, this app.css, and the index.js. All the other files inside the source directory, I am going to get rid of all of these files. So let me get rid of app test, index.css, the logo svg, service worker setups, and setup tests. So I am going to just delete these files. I have to do some adjustments because I removed the index CSS. So let me get rid of this, the service workers as well. And I'm going to get rid of this. Let's save this. And the same thing I have to do inside the app.js. So basically getting rid of the logo. And I'm going to remove this complete header with an h1 tag which says hello world. Save it and let's go to the browser and see if everything is good. So far everything is good. Now I can start working on fetching the recipes and displaying it on my React application. Now I'm going to use Contentful as a dependency, and I'm going to install Contentful by using npm install Contentful. Once Contentful is installed, I'm going to create a file inside the source directory, and I'm going to call it client.js. So the first line of this file is going to be an import star as Contentful from Contentful. Now I'm going to create a client here. I'm going to set up and create a client that is going to use the Contentful APIs to fetch the data from Contentful so that I can consume it in my React application. Now at this point we are ready to set up the client. So I'm going to create the client using this statement, const client equals contentful.createClient, and inside I am going to pass an object that will receive two properties. One is the space ID, so you will enter space, and here it will be your space ID that will go here, and the access token. And for the access token also here there is something for the access token that will go here. So where are you going to get your space ID and the access token? These values you are going to get it from your Contentful account. Once you have your Contentful account, you can go to your settings section. So let me go to Contentful. Here you can see I am in the content section and I have all my content listed over here. I can now go inside the settings section, and then you have to click on the API keys. Now you will see there is an example key already created by Contentful. This key is a default key that comes with the Contentful installation, let's say. And either if you want you can use this key, but for my example project I am currently going to use this key. But after the video tutorial I am going to delete this one and I am going to recreate a new one. And I highly suggest you guys do the same. So basically you can go inside this section, copy the space ID. So let's copy this, go to VS Code, and I am going to paste it inside the space ID, and I will do the same thing for the access token, which is also known as Content Delivery API. Let's copy this key and let's paste it over here. Now I'm going to put an export statement. So this client can now be imported by the app.js file, and then we will be ready to import the content from Contentful. Now, before we move any further, I would like to let you guys know that the way we are entering the API keys in our React files, this is not a very good idea. The API keys are meant to be private, and the way we can keep the files private is by saving them inside the environment variables. And this is how we are going to do that. So basically, you have to come inside the root of your project, create a file over here, and call it .env.development. Now, inside this file, you have to create the two keys that we entered inside the client.js. So basically, we created two different keys, the space ID and the access token. And inside the .env.development file, we are going to use the same keys. So I'm going to copy it over here, paste it for the space ID, and I'm going to copy the access token and put it over here. I will save this, and now inside the client.js file, I am going to remove these keys and instead use the environment variables that we just created. So basically, we will use React app space ID, and here I'm going to call it process .env React app space ID. So this is how we access the environment variables inside a React application. We will say process.env and then the name of the variable. So the name of the variable where I saved my space ID is this one, and this is the variable where I saved my access token. So I'm going to copy it, and I will use the same thing, process.env and then I'm going to paste this variable over here. This way, your keys are going to be private and they are not going to be publicly available to anyone. So no one can steal your keys. This is the good way. Now we are good to proceed. Now we will come to the app.js file, and the first thing I am going to do is to convert this component into a class-based component. So I am going to write class app extends react.component. I am going to take this return from here and put it inside the render function. Perfect. Now what I am going to do is let me remove this h1 from here, and instead I'm going to put a div with a class name of container. Inside this div, I am going to add a header, and I'm also going to add a main tag. So our app header is going to go over here, and the main content is going to go inside the main tag. Inside the header, I'm going to add a div with a class of wrapper. Class name equals wrapper. And the same thing I am going to do for the main tag. Inside the main, there is again a div with a class name of wrapper. Inside the header wrapper, I'm going to put a span for now, and I'm going to just put a simple heading called React and Contentful. And inside this wrapper is where the main content will go. So the first thing that I'm going to do is let me create a state first. So I'm going to create a state which is going to contain a property called articles. which is going to be an empty array. That means when I fetch the content, or this content will be populated inside the state articles. So my class-based component, this component app, is going to have an empty state in the beginning, and then I'm going to make the API call. After the API call, I will fetch the results and I will populate this articles array with that content. And all the API calls inside a class-based component, they are usually made inside component did mount. So I'm going to write this function component did mount, and then I'm going to use a function. I'm going to use the client that I created in the file here, the client.js. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write client.getEntries, and inside client.getEntries this is going to return a promise. So we will write dot then, and here we are going to have something called as dot catch, and we will write console.error. If there is any error, we will write it in the console, and inside the then we will put an arrow function. This arrow function will take response, and as a first step we will simply log the output into the console, into the browser console. So we will write console.log of what we are going to get from the response. So let's save this file and let's go to the browser to see what we see inside the browser console. So here we see React and Contentful that is being populated, and we can see it here. Now if I inspect, and inside the browser console you will see that we are receiving an object, and it is coming from the line number 13 of app.js, and it is exactly the same thing. We are getting a response back, which is an object, and this object contains 4 items. And as you can see that inside Contentful we have 4 entries, and I think these 4 items represent those 4 entries. So we will go inside the fields, we will see the description, we will see the featured image, we have the name. So that means we are getting the response. Perfect. At this time I'm going to apply some styling. Now in order to add the styles, I will just go to the app.css file, and I'm going to replace everything with the styles that I have already created. I have already created some styles that I have copied and pasted over here. And for the body, I'm going to use a background image that I have already used from somewhere, and it is called bg.png. So let me save everything. Let me go back to the browser to see how everything looks. So far, everything is looking good. Now we will go back to the app.js file and we will start populating the data. We have already seen before that we are making a call to Contentful, and we are getting the response back. So far we have been logging the response inside the browser console, but what I want to do at this point is to set the state. So I will use this dot set state, and I'm going to set the state of articles, which was an empty array. I'm going to put response dot items. So far so good. Now my articles, which is inside the state, is going to contain the data that it is receiving from Contentful. Now I will create a new component and I am going to call it posts. So in order to create a component, I will go inside the src. I'm going to create a new folder called components, and inside the components folder I'm going to create a new file called posts.js. This posts.js file is going to contain all the posts that it receives from Contentful. So I'm going to use the shortcut RAFCP tab. It is going to create this template, which is basically a functional component, and what I'm going to do here is it is receiving the prop. So let's save this. Now I will take this articles from here. Let me import the posts first. So import posts from components / posts. I will take this posts component and put it inside the main wrapper. So I'm going to put posts, and I'm going to pass a prop called posts that will be equal to this dot state dot articles. So once all the articles are populated inside my app state, I'm going to pass this as a prop to my posts component. So that means my posts component is then going to receive these props. Now it is going to be an array, so it is going to loop over through them and then create a different post for each and every article that it receives. Now my posts component is already receiving a prop called posts. So I'm going to destructure that prop over here. I'm calling it posts. This is the prop that I am receiving from the app component. You can see that in the app I am going to pass this prop. This prop is then received by the posts component, and I'm going to destructure it here. And since this prop posts is going to be an array, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop over through the array using the map method, and I'm going to say posts dot map, and inside the map method I'm going to pass an arrow function, and for each and every post, so I will call it, let's say, article. For each and every article I want to display something. So let's say I want to display something called post, and since I am mapping over through an array, so it is always a good idea after to put a key here. So for now I'm going to put key equals so let me pass index also, index. Okay, so let me save this and let's go to the browser to see what we get. When we go to the browser, you see that we are receiving 4 different posts. So for now everything is good, but we don't want to just see posts here. So that means what we have to do is I'm going to create another component, and this component is going to be called post. So let me create this component called post.js. And like after mapping through the posts component, instead of rendering this h1 over here, I'm going to render the post component. So that means for each and every post or an article that comes from Contentful, this post component is going to be rendered. So I'm going to again use the same shortcut RAFCP that is going to generate a functional component. Let's save this for now. And inside the posts, let me, instead of h1, I'm going to use post. And let me end this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the complete object that I receive. So I'm going to say article equals article. So my post component, okay, so we have never imported the post. So let me import post from ./post. So I'm rendering the post component and I am passing it a prop called article. Now this article prop is now received by the post component. So I will come here, I will destructure it, and I am going to call it article. And let me do a console log. of article. Let's save this, go back to the browser, and let's see what we get in the console. So when I go to the console, you see that I am receiving 4 different objects from 4 different posts. So I am getting the log from my post.js, and it is receiving the fields which has the description, which has the featured image and the name. Now I am going to destructure my article. So I'm going to create a const, and I am going to call name, featured image, and description, and I'm going to destructure it from article.fields. So let me save this. If you go to the browser, you will see that the 4 objects that I was receiving, there is a fields object, and inside the fields object is the name of the recipe, the featured image, and the description. And that is exactly what I am destructuring it over here. And let me do some cleanup. Let me remove the prop types from here. Let me remove the prop types for now. Maybe I don't need it for now. Let's save this, and I'm going to call this div, like I'm going to give it a class name of post, and inside the post I'm going to give it a title. So I'm going to use the h2 tag, give it a class name of title, and inside the h2 let me just take the name of the recipe that I am getting, and let me paste it here. Let's save this and go back to the browser, and now you will see that the name of the recipe is being populated. That's a good news. Now come back to the code editor, and I'm going to output the description. To output the description, I'm going to use the section. Inside the section tag, I'm going to put description variable. Save this, go back to the browser, and now you will see that the description is coming. But there is a problem. The description that appears is in the markdown format, but what you want is the HTML format. So right now the description looks ugly because it is concatenated into one single string of a markdown, but we want to use the HTML. So what we have to do is to install another package, and the package that we are going to install, it is called as marked. So I'm going to come to my integrated terminal, and I'm going to use npm install marked. So once I install this package, what this package basically does is it will take markdown as an input, and it will output an HTML string that I can use in my JSX. So I will let this package install. I'm going to import this package. So import marked from marked. So I will take this, and let's say I'm going to create another variable. So I'm going to call it const post description, and this post description is going to be put in the marked function that will take the description. So basically take this and put it here in the description. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that the marked will output the HTML string. So let's see what the output is going to look like. So let's take this post description and put it in place of the description and save this. Let's go back to the browser, and what you will notice is that it's no more a markdown, but it is a string of HTML. This is okay, but this is still not good, but because it still looks like a string that is concatenated together and put it into the file. So what you have to do is we have to use something called as dangerously set inner HTML. So now what I will do is I will go to VS Code, and inside the section I'm going to use dangerously set inner HTML, and I'm going to set the HTML to the post description, which is basically a HTML string. So, and I'm going to remove this part So this part, and I'm going to make this section self-closing tag. So let me save this file, go back to the browser, and now you will notice that the description is appearing perfectly okay. So we have the title and we have the description. Now the only thing that is remaining to be rendered is the featured image. So if I look into the browser console, if you look into the fields for the featured image, you will notice that featured image contains another fields, and inside that field there is a file object, and inside the file object is the URL that we are interested in. So basically we have to fetch this URL and we have to output or render the featured image into the post. But let's say for some of the post, if you have not put the featured image, in that case we have to handle that particular case as well. So we will look into how we can do that right now. Now I will go back to the Visual Studio Code and I'm going to put a condition here. So I'm going to check if the featured image exists, only then you output the image. So I'm going to say if featured image is there, then you output the image tag, and image is going to be a self-closing tag. I'm going to put let's say the class name of featured image. I'm going to put the source of the image is going to be featured image dot fields. Let's check in the browser. So it was inside the featured image there is fields, inside the fields there is file, and inside the file there is the URL. So inside the fields there is the file dot URL. The alt attribute is going to be the same as the name of the post, and I'll put the title to be the same as the name of the post. Let's save this file, go back to the browser, and now you will notice that the featured image starts appearing. So the featured image is like kind of bringing the life to the blog. So this is the final output. So in this video you see that my main focus was not on building the React application, but my main focus was how to fetch the content from Contentful, how to get the data from Contentful and plug it into a React application. So this is what we have made in this video. I hope you like this video, and if you like this video, please hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Thank you.